headlights sliced the oppressive blackness of the rural highway, the beam catching the skeletal silhouettes of trees that seemed to lean in, watching. Sarah gripped the steering wheel so tightly her knuckles were white. Her back ached, a deep, persistent throb from the long drive and the weight of the life growing inside her. Next to her, Leo, her 6-year-old son, was stirring. "Mommy, are we there yet?" he mumbled, his voice thick with sleep. "Almost, sweetie. Just a few more minutes," she whispered, her voice rough. She glanced at the rearview mirror, but it offered no comfort, just the endless, empty road stretching behind them. Empty. The word was a lead weight in her gut. It was a week ago, in a cheap roadside motel bathroom in Florida, that the word had become her whole world. Mark, her husband, Leo's father, had simply stopped. No struggle, no pain, the medical examiner said. A sudden, massive, silent heart attack. He was gone, leaving them stranded in the middle of a family vacation that was supposed to be a baby moon before the new baby arrived. The last week had been a blur of paperwork, cremation arrangements, and a grueling, solitary drive back to their home in upstate New York. She hadn't even had the strength to cry properly. It felt like she was functioning on autopilot, her only mission to get Leo and the baby inside her to the safety of their own walls. The car slowed, crunching gravel beneath the tires. They were here. Their house, a charming old Victorian nestled back from the road, looked different. It wasn't welcoming. It was a massive, black shape against the faintest sliver of a crescent moon, its windows like blank, vacant eyes. It hadn't been truly empty when they left. Now, she felt its true, crushing vacuum. "The house is dark, Mommy," Leo observed, his small voice edged with nervousness. "We just have to turn on the lights, honey," she said, forcing a cheerful note she didn't feel. She turned off the engine. The sudden silence that descended was heavy, absolute, broken only by the ticking of the cooling engine. As she fumbled in her purse for the house key, a strange, cold draft snaked around her ankles, though the car doors were closed. She dismissed it as exhaustion. The front porch light, which Mark always left on for them when they traveled, was off. She had asked him to. No, she had asked him to turn it off before they left. Why was she even thinking that? She inserted the key into the deadbolt. The lock turned with a rusty, grating screech that felt deafening in the night. The door swung inward. The air inside was stale and cold, smelling faintly of dust and something else, something metallic, like old pennies. Sarah flipped the wall switch. Nothing. She flipped it again. Harder. Still nothing. The power must have been cut while they were gone. "Stay right here, Leo. I'm going to get the big flashlight from the kitchen drawer," she instructed, her voice low. She didn't want to leave him, but the living room felt like a black pit. She didn't dare walk into blind, not with her belly. She took a shaky step onto the hardwood floor. It didn't creak, which was strange for their old house. It was silent, too silent. Thump. It came from the second floor. A single, distinct sound, like a heavy shoe dropping on a rug. Sarah froze, her heart hammering against her ribs. "Who's there?" she called out, the sound swallowed immediately by the darkness. "Mommy, what was that?" Leo whimpered, clutching the fabric of her coat. "Nothing, baby. Maybe a branch fell on the roof," she lied, pushing him behind her. "Wait here." She crept toward the kitchen, navigating by the faint light filtering from the porch. Her mind was racing, cataloging every possible explanation. A raccoon, a burglar, her imagination frayed by grief. She found the industrial flashlight in the junk drawer, her hand shaking as she switched it on. The beam was a potent yellow cylinder in the inky black. She swept it across the kitchen, empty. Then the dining room, empty. She turned the beam toward the staircase. It stretched up into the oppressive gloom. Thump, drag. This time, it was clearer. A heavy thud, followed by a slow, scraping sound, like something being pulled across the floorboards. It was definitely coming from the hallway just outside their master bedroom. She couldn't call the police. She didn't have her cell phone. It was in the car. She had to protect Leo. Leo, I need you to go back to the car. Go to your booster seat and lock the door. Don't open it for anyone but me. Can you do that for Mommy? Leo's eyes were huge, glistening with tears in the faint light. But you're scared, Mommy. No, I'm just tired, sweetie. Go now. I'll be right there. He didn't argue. He turned and scurried out the door, his small footsteps fading quickly on the gravel drive. She was alone, and she knew, with a certainty that chilled her to the bone, that whatever was upstairs was waiting for her. She gripped the flashlight like a weapon, the light beam dancing nervously. She started up the stairs, each step a groan of old wood, defying the unnatural silence below. 1 step, 2 steps, 3. She reached the landing. The air here was noticeably colder, the metallic tang stronger. She aimed the beam down the hallway toward the master bedroom. The light stopped her breath. The hallway was pristine. The cream runner rug, the antique chest, the framed family photos, all exactly as they had left them. There was no sign of a struggle, no overturned objects, no dust disturbed. But on the rug, directly in front of the master bedroom door, was a single, dark, glistening smear. It was shaped like a footprint, but too large, too heavy, like something dragging itself. She shone the light on the door. It was slightly ajar. She pushed it open with her foot. The beam swept across the room. The unmade bed, the mahogany dresser, the tall mirror, all normal. But the light caught a movement in the far corner, near the ensuite bathroom door. It was the movement of a shadow slipping back from the edge of the light. Show yourself, she screamed, the sound cracking with raw fear. Silence. She moved closer, her heavily pregnant body a slow, easy target. The metallic smell was overpowering now, mixed with a faint, sharp scent of ammonia? She pointed the light at the bathroom door. It was closed. She hesitated. That was Mark's bathroom, the place he always went, the last room she had to put back into order. She raised her hand and gripped the cold brass knob. She turned it slowly. The door swung inward with a whisper. The flashlight beam cut through the darkness of the small bathroom, the white porcelain toilet, the shower curtain, and then the light found him. In the center of the bathroom floor, lying in a wet, dark puddle that reflected the light, was a figure. It was large and awkwardly shaped. It was wearing Mark's favorite blue flannel shirt and his old gray sweatpants. It was not Mark. It was a mannequin, a life-sized store dummy male form. Its plastic face was tilted up toward her, its features smooth, blank, and smiling in a horrific parody of a peaceful expression. But it was what was in the mannequin's chest that made her world real. The plastic torso had been crudely sawed open, and wedged inside the cavity, resting on the hollow base, was a piece of paper. Sarah dropped to her knees, the floor wet beneath her. She reached for the paper, her fingers slick with the cold, dark fluid. It wasn't blood. It smelled of chemicals. She unfolded the paper and held the light to the message, which was written in Mark's familiar, loopy handwriting. I was so cold, Sarah, and it was so dark. I can still see you. The baby will see me too. As she read the last word, the toilet behind the mannequin began to flush. A slow, loud, endless sucking sound. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. She looked up, terror burning away the shock. The sound was coming from inside the tank, but the toilet lid was closed. Then, from the darkness of the hallway behind her, she heard the scrape of a shoe, a heavy, definite drag. She scrambled backward, dropping the note. She shone the light wildly out of the bathroom. The hallway was still dark, but her light caught a flicker near the top of the stairs. It was a silhouette, tall and wide, filling the space. It wasn't dragging its foot. It was lurching, and it was coming toward her. It took one lurching step, then another. Its arms were held straight at its sides, its body leaning, like a puppet whose strings were cut and reattached in the wrong places. And as it moved into the periphery of her light, she saw what was dragging. It wasn't a foot. Trailing behind the thing, like a wet, gray tail, was a piece of cloth, a familiar piece of cloth. It was the corner of the gray sweatpants that Mark was wearing when he died on the motel bathroom floor. The figure stopped just outside the bedroom door. Its head slowly, mechanically, began to tilt, its movements agonizingly stiff. And then, a sound, not a voice, not a moan. It was the wet, metallic, rhythmic gasp of breath being drawn in and out of a chest that was no longer functional. Sarah screamed, a sound that tore from her throat, raw and desperate. She backed into the small bathroom, slamming the door shut. She jammed the deadbolt, a cheap, useless click. She pressed her body against the door, hyperventilating, her pregnant belly pressing into the wood. Thump. A blow struck the door, rattling the frame. Thump. Another, harder. The door was thin. Thump. A splintering crack spiderwebbed from the deadbolt. She looked around wildly. The small window, above the tub. Too high, too small. She turned to face the room. Her eyes fell on the toilet. It was still making the dreadful, gurgling flushing noise. Then she saw it, the mannequin. It wasn't facing the wall anymore. It was facing the door. And the paper, Mark's note, was gone. Suddenly, a loud, clear voice, thin and terrified, cut through the noise of the crashing door and the endless flushing. It was Leo. Mommy! Mommy, the car won't start. I can't open the door. Sarah's blood ran cold. He was outside, locked in the dark. And then she heard the thing in the hall speak, its voice a horrific, gurgling imitation of her husband's, distorted and wet, as if it were speaking through a mouthful of water. Don't worry, Sarah. I'll go get him. The last, massive blow hit the door. The deadbolt ripped out of the frame with a sound like a gunshot, and the bathroom door flew inward. Sarah didn't look at the figure. She didn't have to. She dove past the mannequin, past the still flushing toilet, and out of the bathroom and the bedroom. She ran, her body heavy and slow, down the dark staircase, the lurching footsteps already close behind her on the landing. She burst through the front door and across the porch. Leo! Run! Run! She saw the car's taillights glinting, and her son's small, frantic face pressed against the driver's side window. Then she tripped. Her foot caught the edge of the porch step, and she went down hard onto the gravel, her hands flying out to protect her stomach. She rolled onto her back, gasping for breath, the small pain in her abdomen momentarily eclipsed by the all-consuming terror of the figure standing over her. It was silhouetted against the dark house, massive and utterly wrong. Its head was down, its back hunched, and its chest rising and falling in that horrific, sucking gasp. And it was holding something. It reached out one long, stiff arm and dropped the object into the gravel right next to her head. It was the flashlight. Her flashlight. It had been left on the bathroom floor. The light beam was still on, pointed at the ground, illuminating the small, circular patch of gravel and grass. And in that light, she saw what the figure was dragging. It wasn't a piece of Mark's sweatpants. It was a piece of her suitcase, the one she'd left by the door, and it was tied with a loop of twine to the thing's ankle. The figure didn't move. It just stood there, waiting, its silence now more terrifying than any noise. Sarah stared at the dragging suitcase. Then, slowly, she raised her eyes. The beam of her flashlight was still pointing down, and at the very edge of the illuminated circle, just outside the light, was a tiny, bare foot, and then another, stepping lightly on the grass, and then a small voice, clear and cold, right next to her ear. "He's been watching us the whole time, Mommy. That's why he wanted us to leave the house dark." Sarah turned her head, slowly, horribly. Leo stood over her, his eyes wide and vacant, and in his small hand, he was holding the piece of paper, Mark's note. Only now, the handwriting wasn't Mark's. It was a child's clumsy script, and it didn't say, "The baby will see me too." It said, "I'm bringing the baby to Daddy now." The figure above them gave a final, wet, silent gasp, and the thing that was dragging the suitcase began to lurch toward the car. And from inside the car, a new noise began, a tiny, faint, muffled crying.